Send lawyers, guns and money. Send lawyers, guns and money.
Listen, welcome to whoever's watching this. Welcome to Lawyers, Guns and Money. This is the legal web show brought to you by LawyerFair. To those of you, the few people that are not aware of LawyerFair, we are the only legal comparison service that's dedicated to business and to matching business with a panel of great lawyers and great firms. And one of those great firms is Hillier McEwen, and Steve Harvey, who's a partner at Hillier McEwen, has joined us this morning. Welcome, Steve.
Welcome. It's one of the grander introductions I think I've ever had, quite frankly.
It took me days to script that out, let me tell you. That had to be written out. But Hilliers I'm very delighted. Hilliers were one of the first firms to join the LawyerFair panel, and the feedback has been fantastic, by the way, Steve. So a bit of online feedback for you is very positive. And I was personally delighted to have the firm on because I've known you for a number of years. And Hillier McEwen, to me, are two things that I've always been impressed about with the firm is very customer focused and also an entrepreneurial mindset. And that helps both in terms of your own development, which we're going to talk about in a moment, but also the way that you react with local entrepreneurs and business owners. So it'd be useful, Steve, just give me or whoever's listening to a little bit more background information about the firm and where you've come from and perhaps a little bit about where you're heading.
Of course, can. Yeah, the firm started in Chester in the 1950s, and for a large part existed as a typical high street practice, doing anything that walked in really off the street. But I think there was a seminal moment, probably in around 2004, 2005, when the firm realised that they had to move away from traditional areas of law and start to look at other areas of law. From that point onwards, we became particularly focused on delivering business-to-business services. And within that, we've become increasingly aware that different businesses require different needs. And so structuring our services such that the clients can access them in the way in which they would want to is crucial for me. I think that of all of the competition, we are very, very much aware of how important it is to deliver a service that the client values.
Well, and again, I know from personal experience, Steve, that you do a great job of that. The area we're going to chat about and focus on is the area of which is quite exciting, certainly from the business perspective and the smaller business perspective, is the area of commoditisation and certain types of law which are becoming more and more commoditized. And there are lots of new models and technology and external investment coming in that's reshaping this space. And Hilliers are now very much involved in that strategic development for yourselves. I mean, generally, Steve, the way the market is moving, what's your sense about the way the market is moving in terms of commoditization, the areas of law that's possible with?
I think there has been quite a lot of talk about the hourglass effect, not just in the legal sector, but in many other areas. And I certainly can see a particular type of service coming through for your bigger corporates who have a regular turnaround of work, and I can see how that can be very easily commoditized. Equally, and this is where we fit in, we've always concentrated on the SME OMB market. And for my part, the lifeblood of that is startup businesses. How we interact with startup businesses in particular is crucial for our pipeline. But more often than not, legal services have been seen as too expensive. Even emanating out of Hillier McEwen, they've been seen as too expensive. And we need to find solutions for our clients that allow them to access our services, but in a way and in a manner that fits with their budgeted and cash flow forecasts.
Well, it's a great point, Steve, because I think one of the areas where I think it's quite exciting, but where legal services I think has been very slow to move, is in shaping the product and the offer towards the customer's needs, and it's particularly relevant in that startup space. And we get a lot of it. We get a lot of leads and feedback from startups and early stage companies, and the quotes that we receive sometimes are just completely crazy. They're crazy not only in terms of the amount, but actually that upfront hit on cost. And I think understanding that startups need a slightly different type of service is where your new breakthrough service is coming from, isn't it? Could you just give me a little bit more background then, Steve, and start to explain a little more about what and how Hilliers are going to create a service that helps this space.
Okay, so for startups, invariably the instructions that we get from startups will broadly fit into two separate categories of agreement. There are commercial agreements, which invariably will include terms and conditions, supply agreements, distribution agreements, agency agreements, and the likes, which are very focused on that particular business commercializing its offering, commercializing its services, or indeed products. And we're often asked to put legal documentation together to help them in that particular context. Very often the clients see that as not necessarily providing great value for money. The costs are ultimately potentially prohibitive. And what we have found is that the actual global cost of the work that's done is not necessarily the prohibiting factor, but more ultimately the fact that payment is expected up front, or indeed at a time when the business simply doesn't have the cash flow or indeed ability to pay for that. There is a correlation, therefore, then between the fact that the work is needed, but ultimately a lack of ability in terms of cash to be able to pay for it. The other area of work that we're generally asked to do, which is a bit more about making sure that each of our businessmen can go home and sleep at night, is in and around the development of constitutional documentation, whether that be shareholders agreements or partnership agreements. And quite clearly, those are important because they are the agreements that will ultimately govern the way in which the business is run. And I think an awful lot of our businessmen without formal shareholders agreements often do go home with sleepless nights wondering whether or not they're going to fall out with their business partner, whatever the case may be. And if they did, how would that be addressed? How would that be dealt with?
Yeah, well, I've got 2 points on that, actually. The shareholders agreement, I often think, is the one that people neglect to their great cost. And it's particularly a case where you've got a bunch of friends, for example, or a couple of friends who go into a business and don't necessarily think it's important, or download one perhaps off the internet, when it really is a crucial document, and you know that more than me, Steve. But so I think being able to package that within an affordable service is really important. I think the other issue here, Steve, that excites me about what you're doing, and also generally where the market is shaping, is that I think a lot of lawyers don't realise the latent market that's out there. There was a survey done recently that suggested 52% of business owners muddle through, was the phrase I think they used, rather than use lawyers. And of course, there's a number of reasons why they don't use lawyers, but cost is probably at the smaller end is the overriding one. And so that's I think, again, it's something that a firm like Hilliers are really seeing and tapping into.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if that example that you've given was actually taken to its nth degree, then the difficulty that most business owners will find is when they do actually fall into conflict with their business partner, then that can often lend itself to very expensive litigation further down the line, whereas actually getting the shareholders agreement in place right up front, that provides for an opportunity to avoid that potentially. And absolutely, I think the question comes down to the fact that it has to be affordable. It has to be something that the client can access within their budgetary restrictions, and we're very focused on making sure that we can try and deliver that.
So, Steve, just talk me through how this service is going to be delivered to a startup, to a business owner.
The model that we've devised to date is actually very simple. Broadly speaking, the vast majority of startup businesses that will come into me will be of one or two natures. Either they will be complex or relatively simple, and we keep it as simple as that. For those more complicated businesses that will require greater attention in terms of the way in which they put together their commercial agreements or indeed their constitutional agreements, then we've structured a service which, broadly speaking, works at around about £200 per month. And for those less complicated businesses, there's a service that would start at roughly around about £100 per month.
And what are they? I mean, is there a way of establishing? When's it launching, by the way? When's this actually going to be available?
Well, our financial year ends in April, and we're going to launch this in greater depth on the 1st of May.
Okay, but I guess people can call you now and start to make.
Absolutely,
yeah. So I mean, in terms of is there a commitment of hours? Is there a commitment of actual, what is going to be delivered in terms of time? Do you think is that something you can quantify at this stage?
It is, but I think therein lies the problem for most of our clients. And whilst we have an internal acceptance as to the amount of time we would provide for one of our clients on £100 per month as opposed to £200 per month. It's more of an internal mechanism for us to understand how we should be pricing that model. But ultimately, the commitment with regard to the clients is to get the documents done, full stop.
So it is a fixed fee package. There's no trigger that's going to create any the classic frustration of the hourly rate or anything of that nature.
No, I think the hourly rate is an internal issue for us, not necessarily an external issue for our clients.
Well, hurrah for that, Steve. I say, I wish there were more solicitors who are, and there increasingly will be more solicitors who confront it on a commercial reality like that, because I think a lot of business owners, and I'm certainly in the pot, find the whole hourly timed billing issue a very difficult one to deal with. So, and particularly that smaller end, where a lot of these issues can be commoditized and packaged in the way that you're doing. Great stuff. So, in terms of the type of business, in terms of the sector, this is pretty open. You're happy to deal, and also the geography. I assume you can reach out pretty much across the UK with this package, can you?
We can do, yeah. I think our bread and butter has always been clients within a specific geographical radius, but this is a sort of service that does take us nationwide. As I said before, we see this very much as an academy, as it were, or a pipeline, as it were, for our SME and OMB clients, which is really where we do most of our work. In that particular context. Once a client does move out of becoming a startup and into an adolescent business and ultimately then to a full-blown SME OMB, what we have found is that our clients do value the service. They do value a relationship at that particular point in time, and we're very focused on how we deliver that service at that level. The one thing I would say is that if that requires personal commitment and personal time, then once it gets up to that particular level, then delivering that nationwide would require us as a business, I guess, to grow, develop more centres, have more people on the ground, if we were to deliver that service nationwide. But that service is very different to the service that you and I are talking about, our breakthrough service, which is aimed and focused in and around all startup businesses.
Well, absolutely. And again, part of the learning that we're going through is that a lot of business owners still clearly want to have that personal relationship. Have the local firm, but we've been surprised, and I think Hilliers have picked up a couple of clients from us about how many are willing to go beyond the geographic boundaries that might have been traditional. So, and this particular service, I suspect, is going to be able to do that very easily. Steve, I think it's a great service. I'm a huge fan of Henry McEwen. They've been great supporters of us from the beginning. So, I'm sure it's going to do great. Anything else that you want to kind of close with in terms of the service or in terms of the message from the firm?
Give us a chance. I guess is probably the thing to say. And that's all that we can ask for as any business. We'd like a greater market share. We want clients to feel comfortable talking to us and interacting with us, using us. And in that context, we're very much open for business.
Well, Steve, I appreciate you joining us this morning. Very best of luck with it. Just to be clear, we do provide a kind of transcript of this, so you can read our words in your own time, Steve, as you need to. But for anybody who wants to get hold of Steve or Hillier McEwen, they're based in Chester, and we will leave a link. There's a link on this recording as well, so people can find you very easily via the internet. Steve, thanks again.
No problem. Thank you.
Good luck. This has been Lawyers, Guns and Money. Andrew Weaver from LawyerFair. Thank you very much for watching.
Send lawyers, guns and money. Send lawyers, guns and money.